Hi everyone. So in my previous video, we discussed how data can be transferred between an Arduino and a NodeMCU using the serial port. However, as pointed out in the comments, I was using an old version of the ArduinoJSON library, which I think at the time was version 5.13.2. By the way, thanks for pointing that out. Now these Arduino libraries are updated somewhat regularly, and when they are updated, the language used in the commands may change slightly, but the concept behind the code should remain the same. So in this video, let's run through the changes to the code when using the new version of the ArduinoJSON library, which right now is 6.17.0. Now if you guys like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up by clicking the like button below, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. I'm Chums, and welcome to That's Engineering. Alright guys, so if you want a full explanation of the code along with the circuit diagrams and any hardware connections, please do check out my previous video. You can find it by clicking the link up here or by clicking the link in the description down below. So just to recap, we were using two programs, one for the Arduino and one for the NodeMCU. Now this bit of code is for the Arduino. So as you can see over here, we are using a DHT11 temperature and humidity sensor. So the readings from the sensor will be combined into a JSON object, which will be then placed on the serial port using the ArduinoJSON library. And that data will then be read from the NodeMCU, and it can then be pushed to the cloud or pushed online, or you can do whatever you want with it. So that process of placing the data on the serial port is known as serialization. And on the NodeMCU side, obtaining that data or reading that data from the serial port is known as passing. Right, so I have run through most of these parts of the code in my previous video. Do check that out. But just to recap very quickly, this is including the DHT sensor library for the DHT11 sensor. We will need the software serial library to establish a serial connection between the Arduino and the NodeMCU, and of course the ArduinoJSON library. So you can install this library by going to Tools, Manage Libraries, and searching for JSON. And this is the library that we're using, ArduinoJSON by Benoit Blanchon. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And I'm using version 6.17.0. Right, so this is practically where, within the loop, where the ArduinoJSON library is used. First, a static JSON object has to be created. The wording was changed in the new version to static JSON document, and you can specify a name for the document. I've just used the name doc, which was taken directly out of the documentation for the latest version of the ArduinoJSON library. You have to also specify the size of the object. I've used 1000 here, which represents 1000 bytes. The next step is where I just collect the temperature and humidity data. This function is all the way down here, so it just obtains the humidity and temperature data from the DHT11 sensor. I can then insert this data into the JSON object using these two commands. And the final step would be to place the JSON object on the serial port. And this is done very simply using one command, serialize JSON, where you specify the name of the JSON object and the serial connection. Now keep in mind that the serial connection was initialized at the top of the code over here. I have initialized two pins, pin 5 and pin 6 on the Arduino, where pin 5 is the receiving port RX and pin 6 the transmitting port TX. So that's all for the Arduino code. Let's have a look at the code for the NodeMCU. Right, so this is the code for the NodeMCU. I've included the software serial library and the ArduinoJSON library. I have specified the serial ports to be D6 and D5 on the NodeMCU, where D6 is RX and D5 is TX. Again, you should check out the previous video where I have explained this quite clearly. Right, so I'm going to jump to the loop. In the loop, I have to recreate another static JSON object, I've given it the same name doc just to avoid confusion, and the same size, 1000 bytes. I can then read the JSON object placed on the serial port by the Arduino and deserialize it, and that's done using this command, deserialize JSON. I specify the name of the object, doc in which I want to store it, which corresponds to this one over here, and the object coming on the serial port, which would be the NodeMCU. I can also find an error. So an error shows if an invalid JSON object has been received. I can test to see if the parsing was successful using this bit of code over here. So if an invalid JSON object is received, the if loop will be activated. It will print out invalid JSON object and return to the start of the loop. So this process will just continue until a valid set of readings are obtained. When they are obtained, it would print out that a JSON object has been received, and I can then simply print out the humidity and temperature, which are my sensor readings, using this command over here. So I have a temporary variable, floating variable hum, and I can read the humidity attribute of this object using this command. Same for temperature, and then it's just a matter of printing it out. So let's go ahead and run this code and see how it works. Right, so we're looking again at the Arduino side code. Let's go ahead and upload this. So go to Tools, make sure the correct board is selected, Arduino Uno, and the correct COM port. My Arduino is connected to COM3. So I'm going to go ahead and upload the code. Right, and I can now check the serial monitor, and I'll be getting the humidity and temperature readings from the DHT11 sensor. So I have put a delay here of 500 milliseconds. So every 500 milliseconds it will send me a new humidity and temperature reading, and that would be placed onto the serial port. Right, so let's go ahead, close this, and look at the NodeMCU. Right, so when you're uploading this, make sure the NodeMCU board is chosen over here, NodeMCU or ESP12. Make sure the correct COM port is selected. My NodeMCU is on COM4. So I'll go ahead and upload this. Right, so now we can go to the serial monitor while selecting COM4 to see what the NodeMCU is reading. So on the NodeMCU, the delay is placed for every 2 seconds. So at every 2-second interval, it will obtain whatever JSON object that is placed on the serial port, and it will print that out. So this is the received humidity and received temperature on the NodeMCU. Right guys, so that's about it for this video. Just a reminder, you can find a link to my previous video in the description down below, and I will also leave a link to the documentation for the ArduinoJSON library in the description down below. Go through the documentation and you can find out exactly what these particular commands do. Alright everyone, so that's all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something. Now if you guys have any questions or clarifications on the work we just did, please feel free to leave a comment and I will do my best to get back to you. If you guys like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up by clicking the like button below, and if you haven't done so already, please click that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.